Now call to order this evening's Plan Commission meeting for December the 3rd, 2025. Secretary, would you mind calling the roll, please?
Jerry Miller.
Here.
Chad Herm.
Here.
Paul Lori.
Present.
Blake Kruger.
Here.
Jasper Buda.
Here.
Lisa Schmidt. Here. Dana Schneer. Present. Ben Nowatarski.
Here.
Ann Shepard. Here. Lynn Pierce.
Here.
Tim Hagan. Here. Renee Fabric. Here. And Josh Gunsman.
Here.
It's definitely for
All right, fantastic. Full house this evening. Next thing we will have come through here is I'll invite everyone to stand for voluntary pledge of allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. Next item we will seek is an approval of the minutes both from a regular meeting on November the 5th and of the special meeting on November the 17th. Everybody had a chance to review those and sent them electronically this week. So somebody make a motion to approve. Any corrections need to be made?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay, I've got a motion by Jerry. Second. Got a second by Josh. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are now ready to begin the public hearing schedule for this evening. With respect to tonight's meeting and public hearings, we are hereby incorporating by reference into the record of tonight's meeting and public hearings, City of Jasper Ordinance Number 2016-30, entitled the Unified Development Ordinance of the City of Jasper, Indiana, and its jurisdictional area, and any and all amendments thereto, and the City of Jasper Comprehensive Plan. Pursuant to Article 7, Section 6 and 7 of the JPC Rules of Procedure, presentation by petitioner shall be limited to 15 minutes. The call for remonstrators shall be limited to 20 minutes, with individuals limited to no more than 5 minutes at the president's discretion. However, in any case of vacation of a plat or part thereof, every other owner of the land in the plat shall be given an opportunity to comment on the petition. In such a case, at the president's discretion, each property owner may be limited to 3 minutes. Such time limits may be increased by the majority vote of the board members present. All right, with that out of the way, first item we've got on this evening is the old business. It's the Unified Development Ordinance update revisions for 2026. Josh, you want to kind of walk us through all those again? Heard them all already?
That action is tabled for this month, and we'll take that up next month. Thank you.
Okay, so we won't worry about that for now. We'll do that in January. Okay, so first item up is going to be our presentation from Community Vision on there. So we want to come forward on the Jasper Comprehensive Plan.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Paul. So as many of you know, and first of all, thank you for everyone being here, and for everyone in the audience who's come, and those who are joining us online for this presentation. As many of you know, approximately 3 to 4 months ago, we began the process of updating our comprehensive plan. And the first part of any plan is discovery and understanding of where you're starting from and where you've come from. And so as we're ending that phase, I have David Burrell with Future IQ. They're one of the consultants working with us in this process. And David's going to present our community vision and kind of tell us what they've learned through this process of learning more about Jasper through our community survey, in which we had almost 1,300 responses, through our think tank that we've held, as well as other community interviews that have occurred. So here in a second, he'll come up and he'll talk to us kind of what they've learned as we enter into the new phase, which is going to be, what did we learn and what are we going to do about it type of situation. So with that, I would introduce David Burrell with Future IQ. I will share your thing here in 1 moment, David.
All right, thank you, Josh. Good evening, everybody. Great to be here to present this to you tonight. It's a very important sort of point in the comprehensive planning process because, as Josh said, we're midpoint really in this whole development. And just to give a bit of a context, obviously a comprehensive plan is a big picture look at the future. And this is setting a plan for the next 10 years. In the visioning piece, we've been projecting a little bit further out. We've been sort of really asking the question about where you want to go as a community looking out to 2040. Because that gives us the goalposts to then be able to kind of walk back and design the right sort of plan. There's a few elements I want to really hit on. I do have a presentation. I have about 15 minutes or so I want to walk through with you. This is not for decision. It's not concluded. It's a work in progress. But I really wanted to take the opportunity to brief you on what we've been discovering and learning from the community. And I think there's some very important implications for your work as a planning commission, because a lot of what we've been probing is what direction do people want to go and what's the appetite for change. And obviously you deal with as a planning commission as you start to look at future land use maps and zoning and things like that. That's a lot about how your toolkit for how you manage change and how you manage growth over time. So I want to share this with you. So as Josh said, it's just coming to the end of this sort of second big phase, which we call community visioning and engagement. It's been running for a number of months. We've probably had about 1,500 plus people have had very thoughtful input into that. I'm really pleased to see in the room tonight a number of people who are on the steering committee and have been involved in the think tank and other parts of the activity. So I want to report out on that. We do have a community summit coming up on Saturday morning, and that's going to be the last big piece of engagement around this notion of what's our vision and what do we want to build for the future. After that, we sort of synthesize all that data and bring that to a pretty crisp conclusion, and then we start to pivot towards the plan development. But the plan development is really built around what is that direction that people want this community to head, where do they want to see it evolve. So a few things just to highlight. We do have a project website. One of the briefs that was given to us as the consulting team was to have really deep and effective community engagement. So part of that is this community website where people can go to. We're posting all the reports there, all the links for surveys, and as we load up that data, people will be able to look at it on that project website. I think that's really in the spirit of a very open and transparent process. Just put it all out there and people can see what everyone's saying, see how we draw the conclusions from that. So we want this to be very much a participatory process, but also a very transparent process. One of the features, as we've talked about, is this engagement. So we have had this whole mixture of interviews, surveys, the social media posts. We've had newsletters go out. Hopefully you're on the list for a lot of that. I'm sure you see those come through. But again, we're really trying to push this notion of this is a big, important conversation for the community. And if people feel like they've got something they want to add to it or learn about that, the door's open and they get these mechanisms to be able to contribute. A few of the outputs so far that I want to just hit on. These are a series of published pieces of our research. I'm just going to show you a couple of, I think, highlights from each of these reports. I don't want to kind of wade through the whole thing, so they're there for your consideration. We did a community profile, and this is really a bit of a snapshot in looking at sort of where you are and what trajectory you've been on. There's two things that are associated with this community profile that I think are very relevant for the context for the comprehensive plan. So one is about livability. And I know as a community, I've been here enough times, talked to enough people here. I know you're very proud of your community. That's obvious. And people have worked really hard to make this a very family-oriented, very livable community for the people who choose to live here. This is from that community profile. If you look at the data under the Jasper column there, on the right-hand side, the very right-hand side is the sort of the score on livability against different metrics of the median US, the county, and then Jasper. The takeaway from this is that you perform really well. So you're a community that on an overall livability index, and then a series of elements that make up that livability index, you score relatively really well. So I think that's something to note, that there's a very quantitative measure of a lot of the good work that's happened over time, right? So I'm going to talk as I go through sharing with you what we're learning, the good and the challenging pieces, right? So this is a good piece, right? Another piece of data that we talked a lot about actually in the think tank, and I think this is a little bit more for the challenging piece of the data. This is what we call age pyramids, and these are actually for the county. Jasper tracks this pretty close, although you're slightly younger as a community than the county. But in terms of the breakdown of age groups, you track this fairly similarly. The left-hand pyramid there, if you look at the purple and green one on the left-hand side, that's what it looked like in the county in 1970. The middle one is 1990, and the right-hand one is 2022. What I want to point you to is the sort of vertical components is 5-year age increments as you go up. So, 0 to 4, and then all the way up to sort of retiring out, male and female. In 1970, you had this huge bubble of people in the county who were in that teenage years. It was a period where there was a very large youthful population. Essentially, that same big bubble has moved through the system. You can see in 1990, basically the same big bubble was 20 years older, and then you get to today, and what you've got is that bubble's now in the 60 to 64 year age group, right? I think as a context for a comprehensive plan, this is really important, and this is not unusual. Actually, a lot of rural kind of counties and cities follow this trend. But you're facing a future where you have a very large cohort of people who've been here and very active for a long time, who are going to start to fade out of the system. And the challenge is, how do you think about what is the most healthy demographic you have for the future? What are the implications of this for things like housing, for school enrollments, for workforce, all those things? And as we are taking a view, looking out at sort of 2040 and 2035, this data becomes very important in terms of what your trajectory is for the future. Some key insights from the analysis we did. And these are sort of the big questions I think we're going to probe as we go through the rest of the comprehensive plan process. One is, how much growth do you want to see as a community? I mean, the modelling suggests there are different trajectories. One is you could even face a population decline as you see that larger group of sort of older people who are retiring out. But there is the potential, obviously, to see population growth under different scenarios, right? But what is the appetite for growth, and how do you want to activate your appetite in your comprehensive planning process? Another thing to consider, the second one there is, anything that's a comprehensive master plan is going to set down a lot of policy and framework for the future, and that may have different impacts on different segments of the community. So how do we think about that as we go forward? People with different ages, backgrounds, and so on, income levels. That's going to be, I think, a very important focus area. The middle one there, I think, is an important issue. You're very strong on single-family homes, but what's the right residential property mix for the future? And that's going to be obviously direct line into the comprehensive plan, because you get to sort of guide that through your zoning. Just heard examples of that tonight already. Another big area is around industries and workers. You've had a long history of some very successful but multi-generational businesses. That sort of world's changing a little. What do you see as the future for your industries, the type of skill set and workforce? And we've been probing that already. And then, of course, how do you make Jasper even more livable, right? You're already doing well, but this is not something you can kind of relax on, right? The world's competitive in terms of livability. So how do you make Jasper even more livable as we go forward? So that's sort of where we've got to in terms of this kind of initial snapshot. There are some very positive things, there are some challenges, but I think there's some important topics here that we'll explore. I wanted to turn to the community survey for a moment, and we had almost 1,300 responses. Actually, quite a remarkable data set. These are what I would call very high quality data points. We know a lot about each person who took the survey. It's quite a long survey. If you took it, it's probably a 15, 20-minute survey. But we know where those people live, what age group they're in, and all those sort of bits of information. And I've got to say kudos to Josh and his team for really pushing that survey out. I mean, I think he did a great job on encouraging people to take that survey. We're just doing final data cleanup on that. We closed this survey just at the start of November, and we'll be posting this on the portal. But I pulled out a few charts here to show you, and I'll just talk you through it because that bottom bit's cut off. But we plotted a couple of questions here against each other. The vertical axis was, how important do people see having a shared vision? So not important at the bottom, very important at the top. How important is to have a comprehensive plan on the horizontal axis? Not important on the left, very important on the right. I guess encouragingly for a planning commission, most people are in the very upper right. So they recognise the importance of this sort of work of doing visioning and planning. And this is a really broad cross-section of the community in that 1,300. You know, there's a large group there, I think, of about 200 young people who are under 19 years of age, you know, through all different categories, different parts of the community and so on. But good validation for this process in that data. How do you feel about living and working in Jasper? How happy are you? So -5 is very unhappy, to neutral in the middle, and they're very happy on the right. So people feel good about it. Again, that's one of the good bits of news out of it, that there's you know, there's a level of satisfaction here that's really encouraging. Bit more challenging here. This was a plot of 2 questions in the same way as I showed you before. The horizontal axis is about the x-axis about how satisfied are you about the current direction. So the left-hand side is I'm very concerned about the current direction of the community. The right-hand side is I'm very excited. The vertical axis is about the ability to adapt and to create new opportunities. So at the bottom, you're very concerned about that, or not very well equipped, and at the top is very well equipped. You see a bit more of a spread here in the data. I mean, you've got a core group of people in that upper right, pretty excited about things. People really point to the square here as, you know, the things that they're excited about. But you can see there's a real spread there, right? So this is, you know, while the previous data would give you a lot of encouragement about things are great, this kind of gives us pause here that this is worth, you know, digging a little deeper into what are these issues that are on people's minds that they're concerned about in terms of direction, but particularly about the ability to adapt and to create new opportunities. So I think my interpretation, right, I'll tell you what my interpretation is versus what the data is. You can draw yours from that. My interpretation of this, looking at the comments that go with the survey, is that I think a lot of people feel that Jasper's had a really good run. People have worked really hard, done a really good job, but there's an inflection point in front of us. There are some headwinds and tailwinds that are coming together. And some people, as you can see in that, are going, okay, we need to think about the future. We may need to be thinking about doing some things differently. We may have to, you know, up our game in some ways to be able to remain as competitive as we have been. When we post this online, you'll be able to filter that data and look at different age groups and so on. I can tell you my initial look at it. The younger cohorts, the groups that are more concerned about the current direction and have the question marks about their ability to adapt. But you'll be able to look at that yourself as we post that. Again, some of the good stuff, right? How important do you think it is for us to identify and develop a strong strategic position and value proposition? You know, people really recognise the value of that. So that's really, you know, the sort of beating heart of your story. This one here, this is about community dynamics. So this was a question about how do you feel about the current community dynamics? Are we united or are we divided? Left-hand side is a sense that we feel we're very divided. The right-hand side is that we feel very united. Again, there's, you know, the middle on that's neutral, right? Again, it's okay, but it's a little degraded, right? So you would say that there is a sense of we're not all in the same club here together, and that comes through in the open-ended responses as well. I think part of the visioning portion of the comprehensive plan is to draw people together to talk about what is a shared vision for the future. And the plan development has to look at, well, how do we build that alignment as in the community as we go forward. But this data is telling us there's some issues there where people are not feeling full unification in the community. So that's the community survey. There's a lot more on that, but I just wanted to kind of give you some high-level pieces on that. I wanted to pull in this piece here. This is the sort of the full report from the think tank. We have that on the portal. There was a summary sheet for people as they walked in that they could pick up. Again, a lot of information in there that reports out on a 2-day session we had at the end of October, the very start of November. Really great cross-section of people that participated. I think it was, you know, it looked to us that there was really a lot of different voices representing different parts of the community. So we felt it was a really good sort of subset of the community. We had, you know, young people there, retirees and all the other bits, right? And we dug in really deep to talk about what do we think were the future options or scenarios for the future of this community. And I always think of them as they're like railway tracks into the future. So I'm saying, well, what if Jasper goes down that railway track? What happens by the time we get to 2025, 2030, 35, 40, and so on, right? What if we go down the different railway track? What's the outcomes over time? We built this framework, and this is really from the second day. We did a lot of work on the first day looking at important trends and understand what the key drivers were. We pulled that work, and this is the work from the think tank, into this framework, which I just want to walk you through. We were really looking at what we thought were the big issues that are going to shape the future. And there's two main themes that came out from the collective data. One, which is represented on the horizontal axis there, is about community adaptability. So it's back to that question in the survey about, you know, how much do we need to be thinking about adapting and changing and evolving? So this whole issue of our ability to adapt and in what way do we adapt, people saw as a real future splitting theme. Right? So that's a sort of a topic about systems and all those sort of elements in the community. The vertical axis there was about the approach we take to development. I'm going to just walk you through this framework at a very high level because we use this as a testing ground to try and understand where do people see the preferred future. So that horizontal axis, we said, there's this whole issue about the community's adaptability, and we sort of put it on a continuum of two ends. And on the left, we said, well, what if we sort of have a steady and traditional approach? You know, there's a really strong value here on, you know, we take a very thoughtful approach that's part of your culture. You know, you've done that really well for a long time. What if we continue to do that? You know, we're really looking at this continuity and tradition, and we've been very sort of steady and traditional in our community culture and our adaptability. What happens over time if we pursue that? The other end on that axis, we said, well, what if we lean into being more agile and inclusive? You know, this notion that we might be at this inflection point. Maybe we need to think about that. So what would happen perhaps if we leant more into innovation and learning? We thought more about engaging these different voices in the community and so on. They're not intended to be good or bad, right or wrong. They're just different possible ways we could tackle ourselves around community adaptability. What would happen if we, you know, chose different directions? Vertical axis, something very similar. At the bottom, you can't read it all, but it's about incremental and a stewardship focus. So it's talking about being very sort of thoughtful, careful, measured growth, you know, be very, you know, probably a sort of more of a projection of the things we've traditionally done. You know, so that more of that sort of steady focus. The top was saying, well, you know, and again, as in the think tank, we talked about there's a lot of change occurring at the moment in the world. And so, you know, one option you have is the incremental and sort of steady. The other one is, well, we could be more transformative and connected. What happened if we really lean into building this sort of sense of being a strong regional hub, you know, invested more aggressively in some of that, you know, thinking more about technology, diversified industries, housing diversity, those sort of things, right? Roughly speaking, the very lower left of that whole framework is sort of the least amount of change, and the upper right is the most amount of change. So the axes are sort of presented as more of a status quo to maximum change on two different possible directions. Gave us a framework to build out these four different versions of the future. They're in the report. I'm not going to go through them, right? But I want to show you, and that's sort of the summary sheet for people. But you'll notice actually in this grid here, you'll notice that we have these four big scenarios. So if I just look at that one there, so we call that tradition in progress. But in the background, you'll see that there's that 10 by 10 grid. So that then gives us a framework of 100 different versions of the future that are all slightly different across that continuum. And we asked people in the think tank, and I found this to be really interesting data. So on the left-hand side is the responses to the question about, well, what's the least desired future? So what would be the future you'd see would be most unappealing or the least beneficial for Jasper? You can see most people there in the red, which is the least desired, are in the very lower left. There are some in the corners, right? So people do often go, whoa, I don't like that upper right, it's too much change, right? So there's a few people there going, I don't want to go there. But that lower left was really where the sort of majority or the average response were. The middle framework here is around what we call the expected future. So where do people think Jasper is going to end up if we keep doing the same things we're doing by the time we get to 2040. You can see that moves a little up, but it's sort of pretty kind of a balanced future, I guess. So the median actually mathematically is just in that lower left scenario, but it's sort of pretty sort of lower central. But the right-hand one, the preferred future, is the one where we're really asking about where do you want to shoot for the future? And you can see there's a very strong concentration of responses there in that upper right. And people aren't in the extreme upper right, but they are saying we want change on both those continuums, both the community adaptability and the development trajectory. And this is the data from think tank, and we're going to validate this with the community as we go forward. However, I would say it's incredibly consistent with what we've seen in the community survey, what we heard in interviews with people. There's this sense of we need to kind of sort of jump forward, perhaps more than we're comfortable to do, is the essence. And if you blow that up, then you can start to see where that sort of response point is. The snapshot, people talked a lot about different things of how that future might look. So then the last people, I want to just sort of go through this for a second, and then I want to show you sort of the pivot to the next part of the process. In the think tank report, there's some pretty strong narrative that was developed in the group about that preferred future, some of those elements that make up the snapshot. But it is really about pushing, saying we need to really lean into being more adaptable, thinking about our community culture, evolving that, doing that perhaps faster than we have, but also think about our development trajectory and thinking about really leaning into that. Where that leads us to, this is the sort of pivot we're making on Saturday, is if you think about that sort of emerging sense of that desire to head towards that preferred future, what are the big building blocks we need to be working on in this second part of the planning process in order to get there? And we've identified these 5. There's a draft, but community fabric is a really important element. This and I think this might be challenging for at least some people in Jasper, because you've done so much work over time to build a really strong community, yet there are new voices here turning up. You've now got a more diverse population. You've got people who are coming here who want to have a say, right? And so that creates tension when you have a community that's had a long tradition and has really been sort of steeped in that heritage and that tradition. But now we're trying to plan for the future, and we're perhaps trying to make a change. That community fabric, you have to think about how do you sort of nurture that and evolve that. There are people very clearly in the survey who are here who don't feel like they belong, right? And you see that a little bit in that divided and unified data. It comes out very clearly in the written responses, but I think that's something in a plan that we have to consider. The city growth, what is the nature of growth? How fast do we move on that? That topic is going to be obviously very important as we move forward. The connectivity and transportation, both inwards and outwards, is going to be very important as a sort of building block. There's a whole important topic around the workforce and economic development. And what's that skill set for the future that we need? How do we develop that? And then, of course, obviously the quality of your amenities here, your life amenities, because that's part of your value proposition. What we're going to be presenting on Saturday will be really working on these pillars, right, and getting people to contribute to that. We'll be opening that up to the community through a survey as well. But just as an example, I pulled out just this one. This is probably my last slide to give you the update. But we're sort of laying it out like this, which is saying, well, the community fabric is an important topic to work on. Our objective on this, obviously, is to strengthen the vibrant community. You have a vibrant community. It's to strengthen that and make sure that endures over time. But the kind of future insights, the challenges piece, is that the population on here has been getting older, right? And I do think that age pyramid that I showed you is a really important data set to bear in mind as we go forward, because that changes the game in 10 years' time, particularly, right? So when that largest age group, which is now 60, 64, becomes 70, 74, and then 80 to 84, you may have a very different community. There's a key challenge here, obviously, of how can you go about attracting younger people, particularly in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. If you look at that age pyramid, that's the sort of the middle of the hourglass, that's the gap. That's also where people are most active and vital in their lives. It's when people are starting businesses and families and all that stuff. That's a real clear target, I think, in the community fabric discussion. Your populations become much more diverse. So how do you find ways to include and welcome those new voices, right? So for each of those pillars, we're laying out what we see as these key insights, both the good and the challenges that have come through the work so far. I just want to finish up my piece here by just talking about just the next steps in this, then obviously happy to take questions. We have the Future Summit on Saturday. We have actually a steering committee meeting on Friday. We have a great group of people who are involved in that. But the Future Summit will be an opportunity for people to, we'll obviously sort of give people a similar, very quick intro, but then we're going to get people to go to work on those strategic pillars, add their ideas about what should happen. We're going to lay out some big maps of the city and get people to kind of visualize how it might look in the future, and really interactive stuff, right? So to make it enjoyable. And then as we come out of that, that'll give us a lot of data about what people are seeing could be the topic areas, and then we'll move into these task force meetings through January and February to build out these key elements of the action plan. We'll be doing some online discussion boards on those topics. We'll have a survey, as I mentioned, and then that sort of moves us through into then starting to develop out the roadmap and the plan, moving into the middle of the year for finalisation. My concluding comments on this is I actually think it's going really well, right? I want to leave you with that view as the consultant who's been helping lead this part of it. I think Josh and his team have done a really outstanding job in getting the community to engage in this. I think we've had a lot of very thoughtful discussions, and people have felt that they had the opportunity to weigh in on this. I think it's surfaced a lot of really important issues. I think the big topics in front of this community are about your willingness to pivot and change, right? I think that's really if I was to summarize it all down, that's what I think all that data puts right on the table, right? Which is no doubt you've been very successful. People have done a great job here. Well, what do we need to be doing for the next 10 years, the next 15 years? I think that's the kind of new question that's on the table. So with that, I'll conclude my update and briefing, and happy to take questions.
Number one, thank you. That was a tremendous amount of data that was collected, deciphered through, and we really appreciate you getting that condensed down. A quick presentation for everybody here. And again, meetings on Saturday morning to get into a little deeper dive on that. So if anybody's available, I think you're here or here in the room, we'd love to have you. Love to see you out there. Questions for anybody here on the board at this point? Lisa?
I had a few. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
David.
David, thank you, David. Yeah, this was awesome. And thank you for the pre-read. Whoever sent it gave us a little time to digest it. I had a couple ticky-tack questions.
Okay.
Just 'cause I didn't understand all the charts.
Yeah.
I love a good chart. Real quick on the profile. Did that all come from the surveys, the 1,200?
No, so I showed you three different data sets basically. The community profile is background research. So we draw from all different sources, and we're basically just saying, here's a snapshot, right?
Okay.
The community surveys are a different data set, and that's community input, obviously.
Yep.
We haven't posted that yet. I showed you those preliminary
Okay.
results.
Okay.
And then the think tank was from community
Yes.
participants as well.
Yeah, okay, great. So on slide 14, the mortgage payments, I just didn't understand the chart. Is it the quantity of individuals on the left side that responded on each percentage?
Lisa, that the community profile is a set of economic data that just came from various sources,
I just
not
don't
from our
understand the
survey.
left.
Yeah.
What's the quantity?
It's the percent. Oh, I see.
No, the bottom's the percent.
Yeah, okay.
The other axis,
Yeah, I'm with you.
quantity of respondents. I think. Didn't have. Okay,
Oh, it might be number.
sorry.
Might be number of households.
One,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
number
that's-
of households, okay.
But thank you for pointing that out. We'll make a note to check that and
Okay.
it's obviously not clear what the scale is, right?
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then I assumed on I think it's slide 23, the livability, which you
Yes.
showed. AARP must have a livability
That's it.
template, and then we plug in different data from our community, and that's what we score.
That's right. And so it's an index and it's benchmarked nationally, right? So you can look at
Yes.
every city and county and so on, right? It's actually a really great resource because it draws together a whole different sort of a range of data sets. And there's some very similar kind of stuff actually on Stats America that looks at innovation in different counties, but they have all these sort of algorithms that pull a lot of data and then sort of give you a cumulative score on different aspects.
Gotcha. And then my final question, I think you answered it on the last page of the think tank report.
Yeah.
The reference to the pillars. And I think they aren't on here, but those are the 5 you showed.
That's right, yeah.
And as you said, those are drafts at this time.
They're drafts, yeah. And, yeah, so and this is obviously still very much a work in process, right? So, but we are, through the course of this month, we're going to be, particularly after Saturday, we'll be synthesizing all that data into those key streams, and then really sort of, I think, bringing a lot of insight and conclusion to it. So,
I see. Excellent. Thank you. It was very rich. I just had a few.
yeah. Sorry for all the slides, charts and stuff. But we try and tell a story with it. I mean, I think this is a really important community story, and I think when you think about your future, a decade and a half, this is a conversation that's worth digging in a fair bit, right? And you can kind of go, oh, it's all good, let's keep going, right? But I think digging into the data and really thinking about trends and how well you're positioned, I think is one of those very important opportunities to be honest about where we're at and where we're going, but also tap into aspiration and appetite that might be in the community.
Anyone else have any questions? Again, I can appreciate from having worked on the last comprehensive plan that we've seen, in my opinion, considerably deeper dive of data this time than what we did last time. We weren't awarded the last one, so I'm really looking forward for good things coming out of this.
All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank David real quick, and it's already been stated that his group at Future IQ and the other group, WGI, just done a bang up job, and we've been super pleased with the work quality that they're putting out. Look forward to the next 6+ months or so of work with them to kind of flesh some of these things out deeper. Just to hit the points again, though, we do have an public open house this Saturday at the Parklands. That'll be our Future Summit from 9 to 12. Anyone and everyone is welcome to come, so please do. And then finally, a lot of these data sources are on the project website, and a link for that can be found on the city's main website right on the front page. So if you go to the city's website, which is jasperindiana.gov, you'll find a link to the project portal, and then each one of those, the community snapshot, think tank report, more information about the pillars, etc., is all housed there. Wonderful. Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to our next item of business this evening. We're going to see One Fish LLC as owner and petitioner, petition for rezoning from R2 medium density residential to a B3 general business. Phil Beal is going to be presenting for us here on behalf of One Fish LLC. And thank you all for coming. We do this every Wednesday, first Wednesday.
Go home to your family.
Good evening, Phil Beeler with Brosmer Land Surveying and Engineering here on behalf of One Fish LLC, who is owned by Sally Goble Fisher, who is also here being the sole member. The owner of this 3.88 acres of property here on 3rd Avenue behind Denny's Auto Swap Shop, for Kmart here. So this is the subject property that we are talking about. 3.88 acres. A little closer look there, you'll see the property is actually landlocked. We'll talk a little bit about that. There's an existing building down in the southwest corner. We'll talk about that as well. So this is the 3.88 acres, the subject piece of property that we are here to talk about. Specifically, a rezone. Here's the current zoning map of this. You'll see that the southwest corner of the property is zoned B3. The remainder of the property, and including the property to the west and to the north, is zoned R2, single family residential, or not single family, medium density residential. So we are here to talk about a rezone on this piece of property. Specifically going forward, we would be here to be talking. What's driving this is the desire. There's two things really. There's a current tenant in this existing structure that the desire is to sell that structure, that to the tenant. And then the proposal would then be to continue some of the operation that's in there, or One Fish would like to, in a proposed approximately 100 by 40 building down here in the southeast corner. So at the Board of Zoning Appeals, we applied, we're concurrently, and we got a contingent approval for a special exception for this building for a boat/RV storage facility and a contractor's warehouse storage facility. Those are special exceptions in the B3 zone. So currently the land is zoned, as I stated, besides this little tract down here, the current property is zoned R2. R2 basically, if we go back up to the uses, R2 basically just sets forth residential uses. A few things over here in the special exception uses. Then you get down into the B3, and there's a myriad of permitted uses. And then the special exception uses, you'll see the two that we were talking about right down here. So that was approved contingent upon this portion of the property being rezoned to B3, general business. If you look at, so here was the current, again, here's the current zoning map. You'll see the B3, Denny's Auto, Swap Shop, Jackie's Travel, liquor store, Tri-Cap, Dollar General, like all, going along 3rd Avenue, that would be, this maroon would be your B3 zone, ties back into the Life Spring up here. You have the Meadowbrook multifamily facility here zoned R4. As I stated, currently R2 to the west, R2 to the north. Okay, so the district standards here. This is the comprehensive plan, the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. It gets a little muddled in here, but I think conceptually, I'm showing here the approximate subject tract here, and what it shows is a link of the R2, the B3, the red, linking into the existing B3 that continues down southeasterly along 3rd Avenue. And one thing to point out, and I'll get to this too, it does show the remainder of the tract, the north tract, as being R2. If you look at the initial submittal and the application, the subject tract is 3.88 acres. What we submitted was an application proposing a 2-lot subdivision, rezoning the entire property to B3, based upon some input from the neighbors, specifically the Downs who live up to the north. We had a meeting, Sally Gogol and I had a meeting with the Downs today, who own, they own approximately 23 acres up here to the north. The residents up here, including the woods back behind here. This is all zoned R2 all the way up to 2nd Avenue. So based upon a meeting that we had with them today, the concern was bringing the R3 zone up all the way to the north line of the One Fish property, which is the south line of their property. So based upon that, the proposal and what we would be proposing to you this evening would be to propose a rezone of, if we take roughly the south line of the Lampert, this is owned by Denny Lampert, the family that owns this down here. This is zoned R2 over here. Would be to take this line and basically extend that straight west. And that results in approximately 2 acres to the north that would remain R2 and serve as a residential buffer for the Downses to the north. And then we would do in the future, contingent upon your approval to B3, we would do a two-lot plat for the existing building here, and then the proposed building down here in the southeast corner. And then this piece of property up here would remain, whether it gets platted or if it's just a remnant tract. As part of the platting process, R2 requires road frontage. So we will have to seek a variance for road frontage because we don't have the 80 feet that is required for an R2 zone. So through the platting process, that will be addressed. There's a current easement coming in here, proposed easement to extend through lot number 1 that would then provide access to the north side of the building on lot number 2. Again, the main point to here for what we're here to talk about tonight would be that we, in the application, specified the entire property. We are presenting to rezone just the south, approximately 1.88 acres, something like that, leaving an approximate 2 acre buffer up here to remain R2. This being driven by like I said, 2 things. One, the desire to sell this tract to the current, or this property to the current tenant of this building, and then to construct a new building down in the southeast corner of this property that would be as the uses set forth, a boat/RV storage facility and contractor's warehouse. Sally has quite some rental properties and needs a place to store some of her cabinetry and tools and things that she operates her business with, as well as the desire to possibly have some boat and RV storage in these bays. So we have this rendering of just generally speaking what the building would look like. Another rendering here, not red, of what the building would look like. Here is this is a couple pictures of the existing building. This would be the building over that was on the green tract over in kind of the southwest corner. This is, metal sided building. That's looking from the highway, basically looking up, this is where the access to the property is here. So a look at that building from the highway, a look at the same building back from behind it, looking south. So that's the existing building. And again, that is sitting right here. First picture was from down here looking up, second picture from here coming back. Proposal would be then for a approximately 100 by 40 building down here as depicted by those renderings, with access coming through from the north to the bays on the north side of that building. And the crux from the rezoning standpoint would be that we're not proposing to rezone the entire property. We would be proposing to rezone from this line south as a resultant of a meeting that Sally and I had with the Downses today.
What is the property directly below the zone 2?
That is, I'm going to say it wrong, but like the Spencer Warwick DuBois Educate.
So it is a business. It's a business.
It's basically.
It's a tri-cap.
It's the yeah. So tri-cap sits. Yeah, it's the old Dipples building. This is a playground that supplements that. So yeah, that is with the tri-cap. Yeah. So they come from their building here and come in and enter the playground here and then go back to their building down here.
what's the proposed, access to lot two? And they did.
Well, there's an existing easement that gets us to this line. And then this is going to be the plat. So then we would set forth, and the plat will be, mind you, would be done by One Fish. So they would come, which means they have the right to set forth an easement. So they would set forth the desired easement through here that would get them onto lot number 2, however that is, given the slopes and those sort of things. And then once they're on their own lot, then they don't need an easement at that point.
And there's not enough room with that, just side of that building.
So both lots are coming in south of the swap shop. Is that what that's the is?
This is the swap shop
Yeah.
right here.
So they're both.
Yeah. Which is the existing access that is used to access this property. So continue the same use, yeah.
I think
That's the.
So there is enough room?
for the easement to go through.
Yeah, side of that building, so there's enough property.
Yeah.
Around the tight spots, what she's talking
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking like right here.
about.
Yeah.
And
What's
for,
the distance there?
I don't know specifically the distance, but I mean, through the planning process, that would all be
That has
addressed.
to resolve anything like that through the planning process.
What about what is the plan for the property down above it that will be landlocked?
So as part of the plat, the R2 requires road frontage, 80 feet of road frontage. So part of the process of this plat, whether this gets included in the plat or whether it doesn't get included in the plat, the plan likely at some point would either for this to be either a residential lot, either a single family home or a duplex, or just a buffer. But as part of the platting process for these 2 lots, this tract up here, because as it is right now, the 3.88 acres would be a legal non-conforming tract. If we prove that this 3.88 acres has access, both physical access and utility access, the city of Jasper, without doing any platting, could issue on the 3.88 acres a single building permit for a permitted use in the R2 zone, which is to say to a house or a duplex on the 3.88 acres. So as it is right now, it's a legal non-conforming tract. When this goes and happens, then all of a sudden the 3.88 acres is not a legal non-conforming tract. So that's why part of the process of this plat here would be to seek a variance for this, so that whether this is lot number 3 of the subdivision zoned R2, or whether this is just a meets and bounds remnant tract, it has proven that it has the variance to address the road frontage issue that you brought up. And then 2, in order to get a building permit, it would have to prove that it is served sufficiently by utilities, and then that it has legal access. So that would be the plan for the north tract, is to have prove those 3 things in some capacity, so that in the future they could build 1 residence up here. And if there was anything other than that was wanting to be done up here, they would have to seek a variance, which would be a public hearing process, which would give any of the neighbors notice of what the plan was, and then the right to speak on that.
Well, Phil, I mean, they would be able to build whatever is permitted in R2. If they've gone through the process of getting the variance and doing those things.
Correct.
So it's not necessarily just 1 single family residence. Like one use, but it wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, there are. I simplified that a little bit, because a duplex is a permitted use in an R2 zone. There aren't if you look at the list in the R2, there aren't a lot. That was I simplified that. Yeah,
make sure.
yeah. It's not. Yeah, it could be right now. Any of these uses right here, if proven if all other things proven, one permit for those permitted uses could be issued now, or get the variance, utilities access in the future, the same a permit for these same uses could be granted up there. And it's not just single family. Correct.
And for those of you, I think if most people were here earlier, but just went through the board of zoning appeals earlier, and they were granted all 3 variances that they came in and requested for that property. We had a neighbor stand up and talk here. It's going to go up and do the same here in just a moment if you so choose, Mr. Dallas.
Yep. The 3 variances, that was actually for the Corbins.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we received contingent approval for the special exception for these uses right here in the B3 zone. So obviously that would be contingent upon the subject property getting rezoned to B3.
And we did again hear from one of the neighboring property owners who came up and gave their spiel. You'd like to come up and speak again, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm Bill Downs. My wife Kathy is with me, and we own 445 3rd Avenue, approximately 22.9 acres that we acquired 2.5 years ago. When we were going through the process of buying it, the first thing we did, my dad was a realtor, the first thing we did was look at the zoning maps of the city of Jasper, and we wanted to make sure that our investment would be protected by the zone designation of the surrounding land, and we observed that it was R2 to our south. We recognized it was commercial properties to our west, the restaurant, hotel, and to the south, the prior existing commercial activity on 3rd Avenue. And we thought, okay, this is a good investment, and we have some solitude back there. We have R2 neighbors to our south. There may be some property, there may be some homes built, but it didn't appear to us to be of any concern. So we purchased the property, put a good deal of our life savings into it. It was a beautiful house, but it needed a lot of work. And we've got it to the point where we're happy with it. And then when this request was made, we were alarmed, and because we recognize that if it may not have been, it wasn't Mrs. Goebel's intention to build up to the 35 feet to the north boundary to our home. We knew that, but a subsequent purchaser would be able to do that and could build a building 50 feet tall within 35 feet of our residence, and that would be devastating. I think you could appreciate any landowner, any homeowner would be concerned if something like that happened in adjacent property. So we resisted. We're happy to speak with Ms. Goebel and her representative, and we had a constructive conversation today. We're trying to problem solve this to everyone's satisfaction. We want to be good neighbors with her. We want her to enjoy the full value of her property without prejudicing our interests. So the solution that we came up with, I think, achieves that goal. It may be that we'll have neighbors in that we hope platted R2 lot next to our property. That's fine. Welcome neighbors into the neighborhood. Nobody else there. Gets a little lonely at times, but we don't want to have a barn. We don't want to have commercial property at all. And this would achieve that result. And we would be willing to accommodate anything they need to obtain this result. We want to protect that buffer of R2 property, not just that property, but the property going on to 3rd Avenue. We have no objection to the development of that as R2, but as B3, that would be something we would resist. And so hopefully we'll put this problem to rest with this proposed solution, and we accept it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
So we're looking at here the potential of rezoning this through a planning procedure. Sending it on to the common council for a request for rezone.
Yeah, currently I don't have, and Renee, you'll just have to tell me what, because this would go to the council. If you need a meets and bounds description of that at that time, or at least at the time whenever obviously when you're drafting the ordinance. At some point, we will have a meets and bounds description of the land that is to be rezoned to B3, should you approve that, because that would be the same land that would be the boundary description for the subdivision plat.
I was a little confused myself. I was looking at when you wanted to keep the northern half of that lot as an R2. I kept thinking, going back in my head, said, we gotta get an easement, it's not lot, but it's part of lot 2. You got lot 1 in the green, lot 2 surrounding. Just in red, or was red and orange, but the red and lot 2.
Just the red would be lot number 2. And then, yeah, so then the easement would be, now mind you that when this is platted, this is all owned and will be platted by One Fish. So they have control over that. And they have the control over setting forth access easements, be it access easements, or in coordination with city utilities, setting forth utilities to get utilities where they would need to be.
Orange is not a dirt lot.
Not, it could be, it doesn't have to be that.
Regardless, I don't think that we would be interested in allowing this to move forward if the result was that the orange lot was there landlocked with no access.
That was my point.
So whether it's included in the plat or not, there's going to need to be an easement.
Well, whether it's included in the plat or not, we are going from a legal non-conforming tract to the north remnant tract not being a legal tract. It would remain R2, which requires 80 feet of frontage, and it's not going to have that. So by doing what we're doing on the south, whether we include that as platted or unplatted, there would have to be a variance for that land to the north. And if that variance isn't approved, then we would not be allowed to do what we're presenting with that slide right there.
I just remember this from College View Estates. We read this a couple of years ago. We would not allow a person to parcel off and leave landlocked acre, even though we own surrounding ground, without creating an easement too. That's just what's in my head.
Yeah, so
I think that's where we are.
yeah, exactly, and I think Phil's summarized it pretty well, but this is just one step. There are multiple steps yet. So you guys are going to either approve or deny, or to recommend to council to rezone this, of which then Phil is going to have to decide whether or not this is a 3-plat subdivision or a 2-plat subdivision, with the remainder being, by creating that new orange remainder, he will be forced to come and get a variance because there's no frontage. And then through that, again, at the BZA, then we'll either go through a minor or a major plat, depending on what utilities looks like with the plat committee, or back here to planning commission, all before any of this could happen.
My only concern is it's looking like a third lot that's not identified as third lots. Yep, as long as we're all clear on that. Okay, anybody from the public looking to speak on this? No. Motion to close the public hearing. Seek motions. I got a motion from Chad. Second from Blake. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I will now seek a motion, or excuse me, a recommendation to the common council for a rezone, for or against. As presented.
Make the motion to.
Okay, okay, I've got a motion from Josh for a positive, for a recommendation for the council to a rezone.
A second.
I got a second from Lisa. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Renee, anything from legal this evening? Josh, anything for you other than a reminder that we've got a summit meeting on Saturday morning from 9 until noon at the Parklands?
You said it best, buddy. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. I'll see nothing else on this evening's agenda. I would take a motion to close tonight's meeting.
I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
Got a motion from Ann, second from Glenn. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night and Merry Christmas all. Thank you. Next meeting will be January the 7th. How about it?
Oh, I can't believe I forgot. It is Paul's birthday, and I feel like we should all sing to Paul. Can't believe I forgot that.